Shabbat Shalom, friends. I'm honored to officially welcome you again to our Shabbat morning and to share a couple of thoughts on this week's Parsha and where we are with things. In one of the most famous scenes in Fiddler on the Roof, the men of Anatevka celebrate in the local tavern the engagement of Tevye's daughter Tzeitel to the wealthy butcher Laser Wolf. They whirl and dance and drink lustily, all while singing and shouting, L'chaim, to life. Although the engagement is soon called off in favor of a far better match for Tzeitel, and the winds of persecution begin to blow through the town and throughout Russia, the song sums up so much of what it means to be a Jew. To revel in the blessings of life and to always remember, as Tevye and Laser Wolf and the men sing, God would like us to be joyful, even when our hearts lie panting on the floor. I remember being young enough to not really understand that line. God would like us to be joyful, even when our hearts lie panting on the floor. For those of you kind enough to look at the J, if you haven't already, I'm saving you the time, but also grateful to the J for giving me a chance to think about these things a couple weeks early, and know that this was written, I'm going to expand just a tiny bit on it, I promise, written in the days after learning of the murder of Hirsch Goldberg Polin and the other young and beautiful hostages who lived such a hell for so long and whose spirits were finally set free, but for whom we mourn so deeply. But it is still true that our hearts are doing more than panting on the floor these days. They're shredded and numb, devastated and broken. Peace still feels so unattainable. The brutal murder of completely innocent captives and the specter of continuing bloodshed is unspeakable. There is unrest in Israel, and threats to Jews and people who love Israel in this country and around the world are frankly terrifying. How can we be joyful? Ki Tavo is a very hard parsha. I'm grateful, as I said, to have been able to read the section we did today to end with such blessings, or promises of such. But if you read the entire portion, it contains this litany of nightmarish curses and hellish consequences for failure to live by the covenant with the God of Israel. And that section and similar ones, but this is the most intense, that's a deal breaker for many Jews. What kind of benevolent deity, they ask, we ask legitimately, would threaten such horrific punishments to a flock of flawed and vulnerable people who are so easily led astray? It's for expansion perhaps on another day or many days, but the Deuteronomic motif of reward and punishment for living or failing to live by the system of Jewish law, changeable as it has been, is in fact a formidable theological challenge, to put it mildly. As a rabbi on a little pulpit, I wrestle with that constantly. So many good people suffer, and so many people who perpetrate wickedness go unpunished and are even celebrated and encouraged not to change their ways, but to continue. As a simple human being of limited understanding, I cannot explain why this is so. But our tradition is old and wise. The sages and we know that striving for a good and decent society gives us the best and only chance of leaving a livable world for our children. And maybe that's the best we can hope for. We all know, of course we know, that systematic neglect of the poor and the needy, cruelty, greed, vulgarity, violence, abuse of our bodies, our neighbors, our land, and our planet will in fact lead to a sick and devastated world. And yet we seem forever caught in a cycle that sends us hurtling down a path of devastation. So reluctantly and by obligation, because it is my job for which I am so grateful, I work my way through the terrors of Deuteronomy 28. You don't have to. I'll hold it for you if you prefer. For right now, it's a lot. And there I search for signs of hope. I'm grasping for something, anything, that can alleviate the pain of the human condition, even a little bit. And in the depths of the unthinkable curses, we are told that travails inevitably come because you would not serve your God with joy and glad hearts over the abundance of everything you have. That's Deuteronomy 28, verse 47. We have troubles that are magnified, or at least assured, because you would not serve your God with joy and glad hearts over the abundance of everything you have. This doesn't mean that those who aren't, or those who are grateful and gracious and kind, won't have troubles. We do. They do, far more than their share. But what the Torah is telling us is that it is inevitable that without gratitude, graciousness, awe, amazement, humility, joy, a glad heart, then for certain, pain and heartache come. The must-haves of life are gratitude, graciousness, awe, amazement, joy, and a glad heart. That's what we need to cultivate, not the material, fleeting, never-enoughness that the world tries to convince us we have to have in order to be happy. No life is without pain, heartbreak, and loss. Does it come because people haven't been punctilious enough with separating meat and dairy dishes or bringing sacrifices to the temple? No. Inasmuch as sacrifices haven't been able to be brought to the temple in almost 2,000 years, and because the laws morph and evolve, they've been doing that for centuries, and consensus has rarely been achieved. It's not failure to live by the elusive letter of the law that dooms us to a loop of despair and dread. It's failure to revel in the magic of life, to mindfully cradle the aching fragility of the world, to cry with joy at the unbearable lightness of being that robs us of the fullness that our Jewish tradition insists is there to be had, if we would but let it in. While we are here, we have the power to turn around. This is the season of turning and returning. The new year is fast approaching, and with it we will pray for the gift of a new beginning, to be written metaphorically in the book of life for good and for blessing. It takes such immense courage to be joyful in the face of the darkness we have experienced and are still experiencing since last Simchat Torah, October 7th, the day that means rejoicing with the Torah. It became a day of such horrendous and ongoing suffering. I know, friends, it can feel disrespectful, even sacrilegious, to dance and sing and love and laugh when there is such pain in the world. I know I've often struggled with that, battling guilt and even shame when celebrating while others are consumed by grief and anguish. I may say a touch more about that on Rosh Hashanah. But the command to give joyful reverence and thanks to the Creator isn't about being insensitive or uncaring in the face of despair. to stave off the curses of hopelessness and paralyzing fear, to fend off the forces that would have us destroy ourselves. We are bidden to smile, to delight, to praise, exalt, and double down on the sweetness of life while we have it. And for that and so much else, I am amazed again at the power, presence, and promise of Judaism. Our hearts may be gasping for life on the floor of the world, but we are permitted, even dare I say commanded, to pick them up and minister to them and each other with gentleness, compassion, and comfort. Let's fill our glasses to the rim, and even through our tears, continue to sing a hearty and joyful l'chaim to life. Shabbat Shalom.